I'm Andrew, and welcome back to Community Design Review, where we take a look at some of this week's best designs from the Custom Magic subreddit as voted on by you, the community. Our meme card for this week is Soulsmith Adorner. It costs 3 black for a 3/1 creature, Bird Warlock with flying, and Sell Your Soul, create 3 treasure tokens. Now, Sell Your Soul as an activation cost may be the best thing I've seen on a Magic card since a deck can have up to 7 cards named 7 Dwarves. Its stat line is just that of a common black flyer, which is fine, and in a vacuum, there's no reason not to sell your soul, so you just get your mana back, and can use it to power out more creatures this turn, or ramp into a huge spell next turn. That makes this really good. Now, I'm a ginger, so I know a thing or two about selling souls, and this could be a real mechanic. Some other people felt the same way, and one user in particular posted several designs playing into that space. Pious Paragon is a cool design, though it still works for you if you've already sold your soul by the time you play it, which feels wrong. So maybe instead of preventing you from selling your soul, it should sacrifice itself when you are soulless. Soulbolt and Learning Mind give small bonus effects for selling your soul, or if an opponent has already done so. None of these really sell me on the mechanic, though. They're interesting, but not particularly exciting. However, this mechanic reminds me of the Wish mechanic that's floated around the subreddit, and that one was really cool, so maybe with proper development, this could be good too. I mean, think about it. This is something you're literally selling your one soul for, so I think it should give you a pretty epic effect. Maybe this card is too powerful, but it's a proof of concept. Our first shoutout this week is Mudai, Hyperion Blacksmith. It costs 1 white for a 1/1 legendary creature, Human Artificer with, you may cast equipment spells for their equip costs rather than their mana costs, and you may activate equip abilities by paying that equipment's mana cost rather than its equip cost. Oh my Halvar. I have a mono white equipment deck for Commander, and this guy could be awesome. He lets you use the best cost on your equipment for both playing and equipping. That means you could play a huge Sigil of Distinction and never remove any charge counters. You could equip Colossus Hammer or Commander's Plate for 1 mana, play Necropouncer for 2. Lightning Greaves and Grafted Warp Gear become completely free. This isn't the most busted thing in the world, but it has some good combos and high potential to combo with equipment that get printed down the road. This is an exciting take on an equipment build-around, and I would love to have him in or commanding my deck. Our second shoutout is Entombment Orders. It costs 2 black for a sorcery that says, exile target non-land permanent. Then, its owner buries that card. A card is considered buried while completely covered by at least 6 centimeters of soil, sand, or gravel. Well, this is definitely Silver Border. While there have been times I've wanted to rip up my opponent's insurrection, turns out destroying another player's cards gets you banned from tournaments. So this serves as a quote-unquote legal way to make sure your opponent never plays Expropriate against you again. And it's also playing on the term bury from Old Magic, which is also pretty funny. And on to our black bordered cards. Number 5 this week is Nyx Born Phoenix. It costs 1 red for a 2/2 enchantment creature, Phoenix, with bestow 3 red, flying, haste, enchanted creature gets +2/+2 flying and haste, and you may cast Nyx Born Phoenix from your graveyard using its Bestow ability. This is really cool. I loved the design of Brokos, and this is a really good version of that design for Bestow. All Phoenixes come back to life, and it's kind of a game to see how interesting you can make that rebirth ability. And this one hits the mark. You can play the creature for cheap, hit with it, and when it dies, give its ability to future creatures. Now, it's going to be hard to make use of the haste part of the enchantment because you'll need to play a creature and have 5 mana left over. The Bestow ability costs a lot, but it should. This thing just keeps coming back. Think of it as an equipment, and the equip cost seems pretty reasonable. Number 4 is Bait and Switch. By the way, WotC has just announced that it will be abolishing the reserve list. There's a link to the announcement in the description. Anyhow, this costs red for an instant that says, counter target spell you control. Bait and Switch deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to any target. This design is really funny, and also combos well with spells like Galta or Blasphemous Act, where you can reduce the cost to a castable amount, but then use Bait and Switch to deal damage equal to the full mana value. But even so, this seems relatively fair. You're spending 2 cards to get in a good chunk of damage, and it's not like there are any 20 cost cards that let you one-shot an opponent. Coming in at number 3, we have Folk Remedies. It costs white for an enchantment that says, whenever you gain life, gain 1 life that many times instead. So this means that if you were to play Chaplain's Blessing, you don't gain 5 life. You simply gain 1 life 5 times. This may seem like a pointless distinction, but check out this message from our guest celebrity. I'm a Johnny's Pride mate, and I love sugar-blasted folk remedies. They're great! Number 2 this week is a cycle of rare dual lands that each have an instant adventure and come into play tapped unless they adventured first. Now, that is an awesome idea for dual lands. Let's take a look at the adventures. Honor the Dead costs white-black and says, put up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard on top of your library in any order. This is nice. It's not getting you straight-up card advantage, but it helps set up your draws in the late game. Note that it doesn't do much early, so if you have this in your opening hand, probably just play the land tapped. Hoist the Boat costs blue-red and says, discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Scry 1. This one feels kind of awkward. Why are you scrying after you draw a card? I mean, Serum Visions does it, and is still good, so maybe this is fine. Follow the Echo costs black-green for an instant that says, look at the top 4 cards of your library. Put 1 of them back onto your library, and the rest into your graveyard. Okay, this one does want to get played early. On turn 2, you can smooth over your draws, setting up more land or spells as needed, and then turn 3, this comes in untapped, and helps play whatever you put on top. Light the Peak costs red-white for an instant with, each player may draw a card. Each player who does skips their next draw step. Okay, so that gets you your next card now? That's the kind of effect that feels good when you're playing it, and feels miserable when you have to pay the piper next turn. So I'm not a huge fan. And finally, Drift Ashore costs green-blue for an instant with, look at the top 3 cards of your library and put them back in any order. Okay, so this one is mostly a worse version of the green-black one. So a few notes here. The text for Adventure lets you cast spells, and because lands aren't spells, you won't be able to play them from Adventure without a rules change. It's a minor change though, so it could happen. Now, each adventure costs both colors of mana that the land produces. This means that these lands will never enter untapped unless you already have access to both its colors. This isn't bad, just something to be aware of. It may often be worth just playing them and ignoring the adventure. Finally, I don't like how all 5 of them manipulate the top of your library. This is a cycle. In a cycle, each card usually has something similar and something different. And for these, each card is already doing the same thing on its land side, so why not make the adventures more different and interesting? It just feels like the same card rehashed a bunch of different ways, which, to be fair, is kind of how dual land cycles work, but I really feel like this cycle could be much more than that. And our big winner this week is Icolo, the Machinator. He costs 2 blue for a 2/3 legendary creature, human wizard with Phyrexian white, Phyrexian blue, Phyrexian black, Phyrexian red, Phyrexian green, tap. Search your library for a card with "You win the game" in its text. Reveal that card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 5 or more differently named permanents with "You win the game" in their text, you win the game. Wow, it's like someone custom made a commander for the EDH deck I just posted. For those of you who didn't see it, I love win the game cards, and made a commander deck that uses as many of them as possible. The deck makes extensive use of tutors to ensure that we can find the combo pieces for different win cons. And this commander does just that. We can either use him to find a combo piece, or if we have too many win cons in hand already, he can use that too. Note that his win the game ability does count himself, so you only need 4 other win the game cards out to trigger it. His tutor ability seems reasonably costed, and hey, you don't mind paying 10 life to find near-death experience. I love Icolo. He does everything my deck wants to do, and I will definitely print him out and try him as my commander. Thank you so much for watching, and to all the people who submitted their designs this week. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, and submit your own designs to the Custom Magic subreddit.